Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel. It's me, Art Burns, your favorite mindfulness coach, or at least I hope so. And I am so happy to be here with you. I hope that you all are having I hope that you're experiencing, as you sit here and listen to to my voice in this podcast, I hope that right now, right here, you're experiencing a moment of peace. And I hope that that peace is soothing you and feeling very positive. And I hope that you are able to, in that peace, receive the words that I'm about to talk about, that I'm about to say, and that you're going to benefit from what I'm about to say, because I have some really exciting stuff to share with you. So the last episode we covered, what the title was, committing to doing the work. Right. I don't know why I'm looking down here. There's nothing down here. Well, there's a note that I found. It's so funny. I tore off a little piece of a notebook for a little page out of my notebook for a shopping list. And this is a notebook that I almost never, it's just like a scratch pad that I use like during calls, just so I don't kind of come back to a subject or something like that. And so it's very rare that I like even go back and look at stuff. But here I see that I made myself a note, which I usually make in a different notebook, about a podcast idea, and I never would have seen it had I not torn that piece off for my shopping list. So isn't that funny how things work that way? So anyway, last time that we spoke, or last session, last episode that I recorded, I talked about committing to doing the work, okay, and what that means, and what that means in the context of what does commitment mean, right? Like the sort of healthy and strong discipline that we can have towards that work. That is the commitment, right? But at the same time, being non-rigid about it and being adaptable and yielding. And some moments, the work just isn't there for us, right? And some moments the work is what we need the most, even though it feels like we don't want it, and so that kind of stuff, right? And so that commitment that we talked about last week, or the last episode, right, is sort of the first half of that, commit to doing the work, right? And so today I want to talk about what I mean by the work, all right? And specifically, though, what I want to talk about is the skill that we're sort of developing through the work, and how we can see that skill, and really the most important way to not only look at that skill, to observe that skill, but also to look for that skill. Right? Where do we find it? Where can we seek it out in our moment by moment experience? Okay. So specifically what I mean by that, and this is really, really super. Oh, but before I get any further, two things before I get any further. Number one, please like, share, subscribe if you haven't already. Please share this with somebody you know. Please drop a comment. All these things really, even if you're just saying, "Hi, Art, thanks for the episode," it's not a question or anything like earth-shattering, but even just those little comments really, increase our algorithmic exposure here. So if you could take just a moment and do that, I would be very, very grateful for that, okay? But the second thing I want to let you know, and for any of you who don't already, I invite you to find and follow me on TikTok and or Instagram. I post sort of short form video content on those two platforms, and I'm actually in the midst of an everyday situation with this. So in other words, I just started yesterday a 30-day series. Okay, so in 30 days, I'm going to post a video about the benefits that we can derive from these simple and easy and very convenient practices of mindfulness. Okay, so please, now it's the same content on Instagram and TikTok. So if you're already overwhelmed with social media accounts, then don't feel like you have to join both. Not on my account. There's no benefit there. It's literally the same exact content, just copied over. I post it on TikTok, and then I share the TikTok to Instagram, and then that gets shared to my Facebook as well. So really, one is fine, okay? And eventually I'll figure out how to put this all onto LinkedIn as well. But it's not. They're not different different content for each of these platforms. It's the same exact content. So don't feel like you have to overload yourself on my account, okay? Because I know how overwhelming it can be. But anyway, back to the topic at hand, okay? So as we So as I said, well, the video that I made yesterday on TikTok talked all about the number one benefit. Not that they're all in order, this 30 day thing, but the most important one I think I did do first, right? Which is the benefit that we get from mindfulness in the form of focused attention. Right. And as I've said here before, we could substitute the word for focused attention, the word presence, right? Because in any given moment, right, our body is doing whatever our body is doing. Right, we cannot be in more than one place at one time. So either I'm driving my car or I'm doing the dishes. I can't be driving the car and doing the dishes at the sink at the same time, right? It just doesn't work that way, right? But whatever it is that my body is doing, my mind does not necessarily and frequently does not want to be involved with that thing that I'm doing right here, right now. And this is particularly true when it comes to things like chores, like dishes or laundry or what have you, like these so-called boring tasks that we have to do. Now, Daniel Goleman, the author of Emotional Intelligence and somebody I call upon a lot in my work, he has a quote that says, I'm going to paraphrase, contrary to popular belief, distracting ourselves during a mundane task like folding laundry actually does not make us feel better. We're actually much better off, and this is confirmed by many other neuroscientists too, by the way, we're much better off. We're going to experience a much more, enjoyable emotional experience if we're just present with doing the laundry. Dan Siegel says it even more powerfully, where and this is the first seminar I ever attended with Dan Siegel, and I was hooked as soon as he said this, that even if you're, like, let's say you're taking a shower, and even if you're thinking about something wildly happy, like he used the the example of a vacation in Hawaii that's coming up, we're still better off not thinking about the vacation in Hawaii, but rather focusing our attention on the shower that we're taking. Okay, so these are two very, very high-profile psychologists and neuroscientists, and you heard it from them, right? So. Anyway, getting back to what I was trying to say is that when we are doing whatever it is we're doing, our body is grounded in that thing automatically because our body cannot be doing anything else in that moment, right? However, our mind, which is to say our attention, can be anywhere at all, okay? I mean, you can time travel, you can go to alternative universes, you can go to the distant past of prehistory, or you could go forward into the future further than any man has ever or woman has ever dared to imagine, right? And this is what our mind does. Now, it's important to recognize that your mind is supposed to do this. Right? Your mind is supposed to be distractible, or I should say, it is distractible by design. Think about an ancient, prehistoric, ancient primitive human, right? Who's out there trying to find berries in a bush. And there's a saber-toothed tiger behind the bush, right? The mind is supposed to sort of take in all the information and say, wait a second, I just heard a sound over there. Well, maybe I should look. Oh, wow, there's a tiger over there. I should run and save myself, right? If we didn't have that distractibility, we'd be just sitting there picking berries until the saber-toothed tiger made lunch of us, right? And in all likelihood, if that's the way our brains worked, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. I would not be recording this. It would be like a lizard doing this instead of me, right? But the point is that it's not to say that, like, when we do train our attention, which is, again, to be present, right? Because if our mind, and again, to be very, very specific, if our attention is with whatever it is that is going on right here, right now, well, that is presence, right? Now, of course, we're talking in terms of like folding laundry and, picking berries and stuff like this, but what if it's sharing a moment with someone you love, right? What if it's, like just being present for someone who is going through a difficult time, right? Our attention is that presence. there's a in Daniel Goleman's book, he talks about a story that of a friend that he was that he relayed, that this woman was called up a friend of hers and was spilling her guts about some like really heavy stuff that was going on with her, and like the death of a family member or something like that, and she felt really comforted by this person who was listening to her on the phone, until she heard the click, 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 click of his keyboard, right? Now, to the person who was click, click, clicking his keyboard, he probably was thinking like, I'm still listening to you. I heard everything you're saying, right? But she recognized in that moment that his attention was no longer fully on her. And therefore, he wasn't really there. And she's right. No matter how much that person thought he was listening, he could not be listening to her at the same time as pecking those keys. You just can't do it. Right? So there's a momentary, even just a microsecond in which his attention was not there, and he could have missed something. There's absolutely no question that you could miss something in that circumstance. Perhaps something really, really important. Right, so that's getting back to this concept of why I say that your attention is the most valuable resource that you can ever possess, ever, and it is so finite, and it is so fleeting, and so again distractible. It wants to wander off all the time, and so this is the reason why the most important benefit that we get from practicing mindfulness, from practicing focusing our attention, right? That the most powerful benefit is the skill of focusing our attention, which is to say the skill of presence. All right? Now, I hope you're all with me so far, because now we're about to like shift gears and talk about something. This is the meat of what I wanted to talk to you today about, and how vitally urgent and important this is, okay? When we train our attention, right, as I said, the mind is made to wander. And when I say the mind, what I'm talking about is like on the physiological or neurophysiological level, right? The nervous system, the brain, the various systems and subsystems of the brain that are responsible for attention and, broader awareness and all this kind of stuff, right? It is built for distractibility, okay? Now, therefore, we could say that at least equally as important as training our attention is to train ourselves to notice when our attention has wandered. Okay? Because again, we do not want it to be some rigid, anchoring of the attention in the present moment that never ever leaves. It's never allowed to move even a little bit away from the present moment. That would be very damaging to us in our lives, in our physical everyday lives, right? So therefore, it's sort of the same skill, right? The skill of focused attention is the skill of noticing when the mind has wandered. And when I say mind has wandered, the mind doesn't go anywhere, right? So it's when the attention has wandered from the here and now, whatever it is that we are doing right here, right now. Now, sometimes it's not a problem, right? Like I said this in the TikTok video this morning, is that if I'm driving down the road, and it's a bright, sunny, summer day, there's no rain, no wind, no danger. It's a, few cars on the road. There's no heavy duty traffic or cars zipping in and out of each other. It's a broad highway, nice, gentle and easy turns, not some, something I have to navigate through, winding and tight turns and stuff like that, right? Well, if that is the case, if it is such a gentle and sort of relaxed drive that I'm taking, then there's nothing wrong with allowing my mind to wander. There's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, the wandering, in that state of our attention wandering, that's when we come up with beautiful ideas, right? That's where like the solution to a problem will arise. That's where, the great scientists of the world will tell you that the moments that they came up with the theory that we celebrate them for was the moment where they were just sort of like distracted, right? One person I've talked about here before was Louis Pasteur, right? Who is the father of the pasteurization process, right? Well, he stumbled upon the anthrax virus. He wasn't looking for the anthrax virus. He was looking for something completely different. But his mind wandered to something else, and there followed the sort of steps and the clues, and wow, here's an amazing scientific discovery, right? So we don't want to even think of the mind wandering as bad, because sometimes it's very good, okay? But what we want to know, the way I would rather phrase it is to say, it's not that the mind wandering is bad. The question is whether the mind wandering is appropriate right here, right now. Because if I am mind wandering like on a beautiful highway with the 4 lanes and like plenty of room and everything to do, if I'm in that state, that mental sort of mind wandering state, and I'm driving on a tight, curvy road that's got rain or ice on it, well, that's very, very dangerous. I need to really be paying attention to this, windy road with the snow and the ice and the rain and all the conditions. This is an appropriate time where I need my attention to be here. And if it moves away, I got to bring it back over and over and over. Now, this naturally happens if you're on a dangerous road, right? Like that's, you'll find yourself locked in because the sort of awareness of your situation tells you that you have to, right? But what if it's, having a conversation with somebody? How many times have you been talking to somebody and realized like, oh crap, I don't know what they said the last minute and a half, right? Or reading a book. How many times have you gotten to the end of flipped a page and been like, wait a second, I have no idea what they said. Right? I have no idea what he just wrote these last 5 paragraphs or whatever it is. How many times have you, walked into a room and said, oh my gosh, what did I come in here for? I can't even remember, right? These are the tiny but very significant moments of our lives. And we might think that they're no big deal, right? But it's a habit, right? And this habit will start to leak into every area of our lives. Making mistakes at work, maybe mistakes, there's some people who listen to this podcast whose work involves public safety, right? So you can't afford to have your attention lapse. And so again, that's the point that I'm trying to make is exactly this, is that it's not so, it is very, very important to learn to train our attention. And by the way, there are many, many benefits that come just from the process and the practice of training our attention. Right? Integration for one, right? We're going to naturally promote a state of integration within our brain and nervous system that leads to all kinds of benefits. And we get this just through the practice of training the attention. So it's very, very important to do this, right? But equally, if not more importantly, at the risk of repeating myself, is knowing when the attention has wandered, but specifically knowing right away when it has wandered, right? Knowing after, 3 or 4 words in the book rather than 3 pages. Knowing, 3 or 4 words that came out of your friend or loved one's mouth instead of 2 minutes later, right? This is the key. And this is the truly very, very important skill, okay? But now here's the thing. This skill in the way that these two skills relate to each other, right? In the way that it is equally as important to train the attention as it is to know when the attention has wandered, right? We can look at that in every aspect of, in the context of mindfulness, but even in the context of just life, right? Like, like for instance, the key, practicing letting go, for instance, right, relies as much or more upon knowing when we're clinging and attached to something. Non-judging awareness is, the most important sort of, backdrop, or the way that we can see non-judging awareness is to notice when we're judging or editorializing our experience. The way we can practice, or as equally as important as practicing loving kindness and compassion, is knowing when we're not behaving with loving kindness and or compassion and or empathy and or anything we can name, right? So it's not just to develop the positive, it's to notice the negative. Now, this plays into another tricky part of our brain, is our brains don't work that way automatically. Our brains are not concerned with what's not there. Our brains are concerned with what is there, right? And but the beautiful thing is that this is not a two-step process, right? By training our mind, our attention, right? By training our attention with mindfulness practices, either formal in the form of, what we all consider to be meditation, or informally, right? Which is also meditation, just not the way most of us look at it, right? But in either of these ways that we cultivate this skill of focused attention, we are also developing the skill of noticing when our attention has wandered. It's not a separate process. It's not something else you have to do. It comes from the same exact process. Same thing with loving kindness. Same thing with attachment. Same thing with acceptance or aversion, whether you want to look at the positive or the negative, right? It's the same exact thing. And so therefore, what we can really say is that the core skill is much more about awareness, right? Awareness of where our attention is, awareness of where we would like our attention to be in terms of, am I going to be focused on the here and now, or am I going to intentionally let my mind wander because I'm driving down this nice, easy drive and this is a great time to, mull over this thing that's been on my mind, right? And this is where, this is again, perhaps the most important skill is the skill to be able to choose between, right? Which is something we would call discernment. Can I discern whether my attention wandering right here, right now is appropriate or inappropriate? Not good or bad, appropriate or inappropriate. Because the mind wandering can never be bad, right? It's always a beneficial thing because you never know what your mind's going to, your attention is going to find as it wanders, right? And so that's a very good thing. It's never going to be bad. But again, it might be inappropriate, and it could even rise to the level of dangerous, right? Dangerous, maybe physically dangerous for myself or other people, maybe dangerous towards my career, maybe dangerous for this relationship I'm developing or this relationship I'm in, dangerous from the stress that it's going to cause me to have my mind wandering or my attention wandering around like this. And that's an important thing to know too, is that the more the attention wanders, right? Or let me put it this way. There are three things essentially that are going to push the attention away, right? That are going to make the attention wander. And these three things are stress, negative mood, negative emotions that we're feeling, just being in a, negative as opposed to bad, right? But like being, sad or going through grief or going through an anger period or whatever it is, that mood that we're in. If it's a negative emotion, that is going to tend to push our attention away, right? And then the last would be any perceived threat of any kind, right? And this doesn't have to be a physical threat. It could be a concern about work. It could be a concern about driving. It could be a concern about anything. right? Those are the three things that are generally going to push our attention or call our attention away from the here and now. And these three things, right, as the attention, does leave the here and now, it tends to create stress and create negative moods and create a sense of inappropriate or disproportionate, fear. So it's a catch-22, and it's a cycle. And the most important thing, again, that we can do is to be able to see it happening, to recognize it clearly, and recognize it quickly. And this is what we get from the practices of mindfulness. Now, the beauty is, this is a really cool thing. I don't have the book; it's upstairs. But I'm in the middle of this wonderful book called Peak Mind by a Dr. Jha, J-H-A, and I've heard her mentioned. She's at the University of Miami. I've heard her mentioned in various other work with Richie Davidson and with other Daniel Goleman. I think mentions her in one of his books, and she's legit. She's a great author, great researcher. And and so she has this new book out called, or not new, it's about 5-6 years old now, called Peak Mind. And now for the life of me, I can't remember why I brought it up. But you should check out the book. Oh, I remember why. This is another benefit of mindfulness, because there was a time where that thought gone, don't even bother trying to find it again. But now almost always I come back to, oh yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Another benefit, and that's going to be on the list. I'm not sure when, but it's definitely on the list of my 30 benefits of mindfulness. But anyway, Dr. Jha and her team have sort of refined the sort of bare minimum we can do and still reap the rewards of this work. Right? It used to be considered about 20 minutes a day. She's knocked it down to 12 minutes a day. And when you do the practices like I teach them, which is predominantly on an informal basis, it doesn't even feel like you're doing 1 minute of practice. So if you'd like to learn about some of these practices, if you want some things to work on, things to get started with, or you want to just chat about what would be the best practices for you, I'm here for you. Okay? I'm going to include my Calendly link in the comments here. So if you want to chat, it's there for you. Just book a time and we'll get on the phone and chat. All right? All right, everybody. I wish you well, and I will be back soon. It's great to. This was a totally impromptu. I got laundry going upstairs. I think my wife just came home, and I got to get up there and try to deal with whatever the kids are doing. But I'm glad I was able to squeeze this episode in. All right, everybody. Wish you well. Take care.